Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I bring to you guys a book called Al-Adab, as-Saghir, والأدب الكبير, or also known as al-Adab al-Kabir, والأدب الصغير, translating to the greater book of manners and the lesser book of manners, written by Ibn al-Muqaffa. He's like a giant, a great in Arabic literature, if you haven't heard of him. So inshallah, this is actually one of his less famous book. His most famous book is called al-Kadimna, which I inshallah hope to bring soon in the future. But let's dive straight into the book. He is Abdullah ibn al-Muqaffa of Persian origin. Before embracing Islam, his name was Ruzbih, and his kunya was Abu Amr. Upon his conversion, he was given the name Abdullah and took the kunya Abu Muhammad. His title, Ibn al-Muqaffa, traces back to his father, the Adwiya, who was in charge of tax collection in Persia under al-Hajjaj. Having embezzled some of the state's funds, he was punished by al-Hajjaj, who struck his hand so severely that they became deformed. Hence he was called al-Muqaffa, meaning the crippled or the shriveled, and his son inherited the title. Ibn al-Muqaffa was raised under the patronage of Banu al-Ahtam, a tribe known for their eloquence and mastery of language. This upbringing greatly influenced him, elevating him to a distinguished status in literature. He served as a scribe for Dawood ibn Hubayra, then for Isa ibn Ali ibn Abdullah, the uncle of al-Mansur, during his governorship of Kirman. Later he worked for Isa's brother Sulaiman ibn Ali when he governed Basra. During this time, Abdullah ibn Ali, the governor of Sham, rebelled against his nephew al-Mansur. Al-Mansur pursued him, forcing him to seek refuge with his brothers Sulaiman and Isa in Basra. When al-Mansur demanded his surrender, his uncles refused, unless a formal amnesty was granted under conditions they dictated. Al-Mansur agreed, and the task of drafting the amnesty was entrusted to Ibn al-Muqaffa. However, he framed it with such stringent terms that it infuriated al-Mansur, who harbored deep resentment against him. Not long after al-Mansur removed his uncle Sulaiman from his position in Basra and appointed Sufyan ibn Muawiyah in his place, Ibn al-Muqaffa, known for his sharp wit, openly mocked Sufyan, particularly ridiculing his large nose. This provoked Sufyan's anger. One day Ibn al-Muqaffa entered Sufyan's residence but never came out. Sufyan had him killed, and it is said that al-Mansur himself may have had a hand in the decision to eliminate him. Ibn al-Muqaffa was widely known for his brilliance and vast knowledge. It was said of him that no Persian was ever more intelligent than he. He was also renowned for his generosity, nobility, and sense of honor. His love for friendship was legendary. One of his famous sayings was, "Sacrifice your wealth and even your life for your friend." He had a well-known friendship with Abd al-Hamid ibn Yahya, the secretary of the last Umayyad Caliph Marwan ibn Muhammad. Despite his literary brilliance, he was accused of heresy by his detractors. However, none of his writings contain anything that conclusively proves this allegation against him. Ibn al-Muqaffa left behind a rich literary legacy in which he blended Persian and Arabic literary traditions. Among his most famous works is al-Kadimna, which he translated from Persian. The book is a collection of fables designed to instill moral wisdom and refine intellect. He also authored al-Adab al-Kabir and al-Adab al-Saghir, both of which are compiled in this volume. Ibn al-Muqaffa acknowledges that he derived this book from the sayings of the ancients. He begins with an introduction discussing the superiority of the early scholars in knowledge, the conditions for properly studying knowledge, the purpose of this book. He then divides the work into two main sections. The first section concerns rulers and their associates, outlining the qualities befitting each. It includes 2 chapters. The first chapter addresses the etiquette of rulers. The second chapter discusses the conduct of those who accompany rulers. The second section is devoted to friendship, the importance of carefully choosing friends, treating them well in all matters related to companionship. Ibn al-Muqaffa also acted as a transmitter of knowledge. In al-Adab al-Saghir, he states, "In this book I have compiled select words from the preserved wisdom of others." However, he did not merely quote, he refined and adapted the material. This book is essentially a collection of ethical and social lessons that encourage the pursuit of knowledge, urge individuals to discipline their own souls, emphasize the importance of friendship, discuss the governance of kings and rulers. Ibn al-Muqaffa's writing is characterized by a unique style, which is known as elusive and simple. Within this style we find logical coherence, refined and eloquent diction, powerful and precise language, the highest degrees of rhetorical excellence. He warned against using obscure or pretentious expressions, advising a fellow writer, "Beware of pursuing rare and archaic words in the hopes of achieving eloquence, for that is the gravest form of speech impediment." His style became dominant, influencing the greatest literary figures of his time. It remained the standard until Al-Jahid introduced a new literary approach. Despite his Persian heritage and deep attachment to his people's traditions and sciences, Ibn al-Muqaffa revolutionized Arabic speech. His works display minimal references to Arabic poetry, proverbs, or historical events, a focus on foreign wisdom rather than traditional Arab perspectives, yet his impact on Arabic literature is immeasurable. He was the first to introduce Persian, Indian, and Greek wisdom into Arabic, incorporate Greek logic, ethics, and social philosophy, elevate Arabic speech to its highest artistic form. He starts in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. To proceed, every created being has a need. Every need has an ultimate purpose, and every purpose has a path leading to it. Allah has ordained measures for all things, prepared the means to their fulfillment, and connected needs with the ways to their attainment. The ultimate goal of humankind and their needs is the prosperity of both their worldly life and their afterlife. The means to achieving this is sound intellect. The sign of sound intellect is the ability to discern matters with insight and to implement that insight with determinations. Manners refine the intellect. Intellects possess inherent dispositions and natural tendencies that enable them to perceive refinement. Through refinement, intellects are nurtured and elevated. Just as a buried seed cannot shed its dryness, manifest its vitality, emerge above the earth, and flourish in greenery and growth without the aid of water that seeps into its resting place, removing from it the harm of dryness and death, and granting it strength and life by the will of Allah, so too is the innate faculty of intellect concealed within the heart. It has neither power nor life nor benefit until it is cultivated by refinement, which is its nourishment, its breath of life, and its fertilization. Most refinement is achieved through eloquence, and most eloquence is acquired through learning. There is not a single letter of its alphabet, nor a single term of its classification, that is not derived, learned, and taken from a preceding authority, whether from spoken discourse or written record. This is proof that people did not invent its foundations on their own, nor did knowledge reach them except from the all-knowing, the most wise. If people have ceased to engage in original work, or to articulate novel expressions, let those who describe and record be aware that even the most eloquent and refined among them is merely like a jeweler who finds rubies, emeralds, and pearls, then strings them into necklaces, earrings, and crowns, placing each gem in its proper setting and assembling each shade with its complement, enhancing its beauty thereby. Such a person is thus called a skilled artisan, or like gold and silversmiths who craft from these metals adornments and vessels that captivate people, or like bees that find the pure forts brought forth by Allah, following paths made easy for them, producing from them a substance that serves as both food and healing. Thus, their honey is attributed to them, and their craftsmanship is acknowledged. So whoever speaks words that are appreciated and admired, let him not marvel at himself with the pride of an innovator, for he has merely gathered and arranged as we have described. Whoever adopts eloquent speech from another and delivers it appropriately in its proper context should not be considered lacking for doing so. Rather, he has been aided in preserving the words of the wise, guided to emulate the righteous, and granted success in learning from the sages. He is not diminished if he does not add to it, for he has reached the pinnacle. He is not to be faulted for not having originated or pioneered the expression himself. Indeed, the completion of intellect, its perfection, and its soundness comes through 7 qualities: preferring what one loves for others, striving diligently for knowledge, exercising careful selection, habitual inclination towards goodness, keen discernment, continuous mindfulness of what has been chosen and believed in, and applying these virtues in speech and action. As for love, it elevates a person to the heights of virtue in both worldly and spiritual affairs when he gives precedence to what he loves, making it the most pleasant and fulfilling thing for him. As for striving, people are not satisfied by merely loving what they desire, nor are they excused from seeking and pursuing it. Their aims and ambitions cannot be realized without diligence and effort. As for careful selection and discernment, seeking is of no benefit without them. How many have pursued wisdom yet stumbled upon folly, choosing what they should have fled from, and rejecting what they should have sought? When one secures what he did not truly intend, thinking he has succeeded, he is most in need of careful discernment and wise pursuit. As for firm conviction after clarity, it is the path to securing excellence once it is recognized, As for preservation and mindfulness, they are the completion of attainment, for forgetfulness and negligence are ever present in man. Therefore, when one selects a wise word or deed, he must commit it to memory for the time of need. As for discernment, in placing things in their rightful context, all benefit ultimately depends on this, and we are in dire need of it. For we have not been placed in this world in a state of abundance and ease, but rather in a state of need and toil. We require sustenance for our survival, just as we require refinement to elevate our intellects. The nourishment of food is not quicker in nurturing the body than the nourishment of refinement is in cultivating the intellect. Our toil in seeking material goods for survival and dominance is no more justified than our toil in seeking knowledge for the well-being of both our religion and worldly life. In this book I have compiled select words of wisdom from what has been preserved among people, words that aid in the cultivation of hearts, the polishing of minds, the sharpening of insight, the revival of thought, and the establishment of sound judgment. They serve as guidance towards praiseworthy deeds and noble morals, if Allah wills. Those who describe and speak are more than those who truly understand, and those who understand are more than those who act upon their knowledge. Let each person consider where he places himself. Every person who has not been afflicted with a deficiency has a share of intellect by which he lives, a share so valuable that he would not exchange for anything in the world. However, not everyone with intellect deserves to be counted among the truly wise or described with their attributes. Whoever aspires to be worthy of that name and description must prepare himself for it, dedicate the length of his days to it, and prefer it over his inclinations, for he has embarked upon a great endeavor that cannot be accomplished heedlessly, nor attained through mere luck, nor realized through self-indulgence. It is unlike the affairs of worldly power, wealth, and adornment, which the negligent may acquire, while the diligent may miss, and which the weak may obtain, while the strong may fail. Let the wise person know that if he neglects certain matters, his intellect will acquaint him with the ignorant. The wise must recognize that all people are alike in their love for what suits them, and their aversion to what harms them. That is a shared trait among both the foolish and the discerning. However, they then diverge in three qualities that encompass all correctness and error, and at these points, scholars and the ignorant, the prudent and the inept are distinguished. The first principle: the wise person considers what harms and what benefits him, knowing that what is most deserving of pursuit, if desirable, and most deserving of avoidance, if detestable, is what is most lasting, enduring, and permanent. From this he perceives the superiority of the afterlife over the world, the excellence of noble character over fleeting desires, and the advantage of comprehensive wisdom that benefits both the self and posterity over short-sighted judgment that grants brief enjoyment before vanishing. The second principle: he evaluates what he prioritizes, placing hope and fear in their rightful places, neither fearing what is not truly harmful, nor hoping in what is unattainable. The third principle: he implements insight with resolve, after recognizing the superiority of what lasts, and after carefully discerning where to place hope and fear. For one who seeks virtue without insight is lost and confused, while one who perceives virtue but lacks determination is crippled and deprived. The wise must engage in contention with their own souls, hold them to account, pass judgment upon them, and both reward and chastise them. As for self-reckoning, one must assess what belongs to them, for in truth, their only true wealth is the numbered days of their life. Whatever of these days passes is irretrievable, unlike spent wealth that can be replenished, and whatever of them is wasted in falsehood cannot be reclaimed for truth. Therefore, one must be vigilant in this reckoning at the turn of the year, at the close of each month, and the passing of each day, examining what has been squandered, what has been gained for the soul, and what burdens have been accrued in both religion and worldly affairs. This should all be compiled into a record, a ledger of calculation, diligence, remembrance, and admonition, wherein the soul is rebuked and humbled until it confesses and submits. As for contention, it arises because the soul, by its very nature as an inciter to evil, claims excuses for what has passed and indulges in vain hopes for what remains. Thus, one must refute its justifications, expose its fallacies, and dismantle its self-deceptions. As for judgment, it entails ruling upon one's deeds, declaring an evil deed as disgraceful, ruinous, and destructive, while recognizing a good deed as beautifying, redeeming, and profitable. As for reward and chastisement, it involves uplifting the soul by recalling its good deeds, hoping for their reward and anticipating their virtue, while simultaneously punishing it by remembering its sins, recoiling in horror from them, shuddering at their weight, and grieving over them. The most intelligent among people are those who hold their souls to the strictest account and grant them the least respite. The wise must remember death several times each day and night, a remembrance that directly reaches the heart and reins in the soul's reckless desires. For indeed, frequent remembrance of death serves as a safeguard against arrogance, and by the permission of God, a shield against distress and despair. The wise must take full account of their own shortcomings, whether in religion, character, or conduct, gathering them in their heart or recording them in a book. They should then frequently review them, obligating themselves to correct them with a set schedule, whether daily, weekly, or monthly. Each time they rectify a flaw, they should erase from their record. Each time they observe an erased fault, they should rejoice, and whenever they see an unresolved fault remaining, they should grieve. The wise must observe the virtues in others, memorize them, and commit to nurturing them within themselves, applying the same method described for correcting faults. The wise should also be selective in their company, avoiding companionship, friendship, and even close proximity with others unless they are people of excellence in knowledge, religion, and character, from whom they may learn, or those who share their commitment to self-improvement, reinforcing their virtues even if they do not surpass them in merit. For noble traits like acts of righteousness thrive and flourish only among those who support and reinforce them. A person of virtue has no kin or close relation closer to them than the one who strengthens their good character and upholds it. Thus, some of the early sages held that the company of a fool raised among scholars was preferable to the company of a sharp-witted person raised among the ignorant. The wise should not grieve over what has passed from this world and what has slipped from their grasp. Rather, they should regard what was once theirs but is now lost as if it had never been, and what they sought but never attained as if they had never pursued it. At the same time, they should enjoy what they have received from this world, but not to the extent of heedless intoxication or reckless excess, for intoxication leads to forgetfulness, and excess leads to negligence, and whoever forgets and neglects is lost. The wise should endear themselves to those of sound intellect, encouraging them to interact freely with them, to the extent that they become devoted guardians over their hearing, sight, and judgment. By relying upon such individuals, their heart finds peace, knowing that if they ever become heedless of themselves, their companions will not neglect them. That is where part 1 ends. Inshallah, I will be releasing part 2 soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.